In this video, we are going to look at the introduction to working with text in C#. So working with text is really a fundamental part of writing programs. It's one of the things that you really need to understand the basics of before you move on to anything else. So whether it's to provide instructions to a user or gathering information or data like a name or address, it's important to know how to work with text. So in C# there are two commonly used data types. There's character and string. So you're going to learn how to manipulate textual data and write programs that take in user inputs and output customizable messages using variables, operators, and built-in methods. So let's go take a look at those. Okay, so building strings. Remember that a string is really a group of characters surrounded by quotation marks, like Alice. Alice is made up of A-L-I-C-E, right? It's really a group of characters, or to be or not to be is made up by all these letters and spaces inside of it, and this punctuation as well. So a string is really a collection of smaller data type character, which is a single character like a or a question mark. So define a variable as a string. You write the data type and then the variable name. Then you set equal to the value inside of quotation marks. So let's take a look at this example. So you have string, which is the data type, string. Then you have the variable name. Then you have equals. And then the value here, puppy. But it has to be in quotation. Okay? Use double quotes to be consistent. All right, and then of course it ends with a semicolon. Next, escape character sequences. So if you want to include quotes in a string, use escape sequence. An escape sequence places a backslash before the inner quotation marks. Okay, so not the outer ones, not the main ones, but inside of the main ones, if you want to include quotation marks as part of what you're writing, make sure that you have that backslash in front of it so that the program doesn't actually read them accidentally and think that you're ending your string, right? So without slash, it'll look like this, and you know, your string might end like that, okay? And then not read the rest of that, and then might read that, maybe, might not understand what that is, okay? So at the very most, it might only read that much. So that's not what you want, right? So the string with the slash, then it would read everything inside of these outer slash, and it will understand that this, outer quotations, it will understand that this quotation mark here is you meant that quotation mark to be inside, read as a part of the string, because you have this forward slash here, right? Because you have this forward slash here, and this forward slash here, so those quotation marks will get read. Right, you can also create a new line with slash, okay? When use escape character sequences to create a new line. So when we print the string to a console, it will print that line below the rest. So if printed on its own, it's going to create an empty line. So to create a new line, you can use the character combination backslash and n. Okay, so here, this will look like so. If Emmylou walked, and then there'll be a new line to the park, okay, underneath the first line. And of course, you can go into Visual Studio, please, and type this out. As you know, you're watching this, you can pause the video, you know, write it out yourself and test it and check it. Next is string concatenation. Quite a mouthful. So often we want to combine strings together or combine strings with a value that we've saved to a variable, right? If you want to kind of combine them, you use the addition symbol, okay? This can add one string to another. So for example, if you have two variables here, like your favorite musician, David Bowie, my favorite musician, Solange. So in console write line, to print it, you can write the string, your favorite musician is, and then you can plus, and here is a variable, your favorite musician, your fave musician, so you don't have to put it in quotations, and then plus again, and mine is, and then note that there's a little space here, right, because otherwise it'd be all squished together, And then again, you have another variable, my favorite musician, and then plus a period. So that works. You just keep adding string, variable, plus string, plus variable, plus punctuation. You can do that. But also remember that when you're doing this, when you concatenate a string with something else that's a different data type, C# will implicitly convert that value to a string. So like if you add a number to it, that's going to now become a string, okay? Make sure that you include spaces, okay, and punctuation so that when you print it out, your variable strings aren't like all squished together without any spaces, okay? It doesn't create spaces for you. You have to put that in yourself. And create one character string at the end. Make sure you do that to include a period, okay? Don't forget that. While, you know, the method that we just talked about, doing the concatenation with a plus and a value and the string plus, that works, but, you know, it's easy to read, right? But it can get really annoying to write, especially if it's very long or you have lots of variables to add. Another option here is string interpolation. So interpolation was introduced in C#6. It enables us to insert our variable values and expressions in the middle of the string and not have to worry about spaces or punctuation. So same thing again, you have your variable, your fave musician, David Bowie, my fave musician, Solange. And then this time you're going to write it like this. So $, quotation, the outer quotation, and ends here, right? Make sure you have a $, and then a quotation. And then everything else in there is going to be all together, okay? All together. Oh, I don't mean to cross that out. Okay, so you don't see any other quotations in there or pluses or anything, right? So, but when you do want to add a variable, you just put it in the curly brackets here. See the curly brackets here? So you just add in the curly brackets and you don't have to do the plus and close quotations and open quotation and create, strings just to add a period or spaces, things like that. So this is much nicer. I much prefer this way. Right, so let's talk a bit about the syntax. Okay, so now here we just have one string, okay, which we append with a $, right, at the very beginning. Very important here, there isn't a space between $, and the quotation mark. Oh, that's a very bad job highlighting. So especially here, so note here, there's no space here. So $, and quotation mark has to be right next to each other. If it's not going to work. Okay, so to insert a variable, like I mentioned before, you use the braces. I call them curly braces, but you can just call them braces. Okay, so every time you have a variable, just put them in curly braces, and then ta-da, it works. All right, so of course I would want you to do the previous example with, bring it into Visual Studio and try that out yourself, and maybe try it with different examples on your own, okay? Test it out. I find that when you play around in it, when you use the code yourself, when you write it yourself, you learn so much more than if you were just to be watching this video passively. So I really highly recommend that you pause the video and go in there and do an example of string interpolation, please. Next, getting info about strings. Things that you can also do in C# is, in addition to containing the value of a piece of text, strings also contain information about themselves. So it could be useful to know these properties when working with strings, right? There's several built-in .NET methods that we can use to get more information about strings. So in the following slides, we're going to take a look at these different methods. Note, though, that the method always wants you to usually wants you to have the variable name first and then dot the method. Okay, just wanted to kind of bring your attention to that before we get started. So one of the first methods we're going to look at is length. Okay, so strings are composed by a set of characters. So we can find out how many characters exist in a string with the length method. Okay, so a common example might be if we're building a form and we need to make sure that a user submission doesn't exceed a certain character length. That's one example. Or if you're creating a password, it has to be at least a certain length. So that's why the length of a string is important. Okay, so in our example here, we have data type string, variable name, user tweet, and then we're going to get someone to input that, right? So read line means we need an input. And then next, we're going to have the data type integer, and the variable is user tweet length. So we're going to use user tweet variable, which is this, okay? And this is whatever the input is, okay? And dot length. Okay, so the method dot length is a method after the variable name. So this returns the length of the password. So we append basically the dot length property to a string that we have. Okay, so I want you to go into Visual Studio and go just copy all this word for word and test it out. Okay, so erase all that. You can pause the video and test it word for word and check it out. And then when you're done, you can unpause the video and come back. Next method we're going to look at is INDEXOF. This finds the position of a specific character or a substring. Okay, INDEXOF, and then using parentheses and dot INDEXOF with parentheses or brackets. This method is useful to search if something exists in a string. So if it does exist, then it's going to return the position of that search term in the larger string. So each character in a string has a unique position like an address. So the position starts at 0 and increments by 1. So in radio, R is actually at position 0, not 1. Okay, A is at 1. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, remember it always starts at 0. Now, if something doesn't exist in the string, then we'll return, the method's going to return a -1. Okay, but here let's see. So we have the string word radio, and then we have word check is looking for from word, which is this. Okay, from word is looking for INDEXOF. Okay, and it's looking for the letter A. Where's A? Okay, 0, 1. Okay, so A is 1 because the positioning starts at 0, right? So the second one will be A, which is actually 1. Okay, so let's say for some reason this word radio is actually radio A and has an A at the end. So if that A occurs more than once, it's still going to return 1. It will return the first instance. Okay, I don't mean to cross that out. So the first instance, if there's more than one instance of it. Okay, so you can also get parts of a string. You can use the built-in .NET methods to grab parts of a string or specific characters in a string. So let's look at the substring method. Substring grabs part of a string using the specified character position, and then it continues until the end of the string, and it returns this as a new string in itself. So INDEXOF, remember INDEXOF? We just used it. INDEXOF is usually used first to get the location, to get the specific character position first. Okay, so let's say we have the variable k and cactus. Okay, so now we are going to use the variable character position to find out where the word cactus starts. Okay, so to do that, we have plant name, which is the variable, this one, and then we use INDEXOF to find out. And what are we finding out? Where cactus starts. And the answer is 11. Okay. So now next we're going to have a new variable. Okay, and it's a string. And we're going to use plant name. Okay, and we're going to use plant name. To plant name, and plant name is here, and we're going to do substring. Okay, the method is substring. I'm going to take that substring, and this could be a number, but instead of entering a number, I'm going to use a variable character position, char position, which will be 11, right? This is char position, right? Which is the same as this. So it's going to look for, in plant name, it's going to look for 11. Okay, and then starting from 11, it's going to go all the way to the end of the string and grab this whole substring from there. So it's going to return cactus. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you. So substring is useful if we only want to use part of a string, but you still want to keep the original data intact. So in this instance, we want to keep the string plant name. We don't want to modify the original string, but we want to grab just the cactus portion out of the string. So we use the INDEXOF method to find where a cactus starts, and then use a substring with the position information to save the word cactus or the substring cactus to a new variable called common name. Next, let's look at bracket notation. So bracket notation is a style of syntax that uses brackets and an integer. So it uses brackets, brackets here, uses brackets, and then it uses an integer value in it to identify a particular value in a collection. Okay, we can use it to find a specific character in a string. Okay, so same example, plant name, you have cacti and cactus, and then we have the character position again to find U. Okay, so this is going to return 15, right? So where is U? U is over here. All right, so it's going to count starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it would be 15 for U. And then a new variable here using the data type character, and we're going to find the plant name, and using the brackets, the character position. So it's 15 in here. So it's going to go here to plant name. Okay, it's going to go here to plant name, and then find number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and it would return U. Right, so similar to the previous example, we're going to use the INDEXOF, right? We use the INDEXOF to grab the character position, in which case it's 15, and then we take the string value and append it. So add to the string, we append the bracket, right? And then the position value. Okay, so we could have written 15 in there, but we don't know that is 15, so we just add the variable in there, which knows that is 15. Okay, so inside the brackets, and that will return U. Okay, there are also built-in .NET methods that we can use to manipulate text data. So using these methods on a string doesn't change the string itself, but it creates an entirely new one. Okay, so for example, and this is our last example for this PowerPoint slide, I hope you have been going into Visual Studio to do to copy these exercises and working on your own and testing them out in Visual Studio. It's one thing just to watch my boring video, but it's another thing to watch it, pause it, and then try it out on your own, and that way then you're really learning. You can only learn by doing. You can't really learn by watching when it comes to coding. Okay, just a reminder of that. All right, anyway, so the last one is we're going to quickly change the case of our strings using the method to upper, or you can do it to lower as well. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to do to upper. So the string here is shouting. Okay, this is my variable shouting, and I'm not shouting, you're shouting, and then we're going to add to upper. Okay, and this is of course going to change this whole string to all caps. I'm not shouting, you're shouting. Okay, and that is it. So don't forget to also practice this in Visual Studio. And then we're done for this PowerPoint. You can move on to the next video after your activities.